We turn now more directly to Kant's uh, philosophy, or Kant's actual theory of ethics, and what we find is that Kant comes along, and he is basically saying, a lot of what we do in life is we try to make decisions based upon some conditional ought, some conditional situation. We make decisions based upon the situation that's at hand. But we should instead be acting out of an unconditional ought. That we ought to be acting unconditionally, unconditional to the situation. He says oftentimes what we do is we go and we live according to a hypothetical imperative. A hypothetical is, you've all heard of like a hypothetical situation. A hypothetical is just an if statement. Like if this happened, what would you do? In a hypothetical situation would be something like, if the lights went out, what would you do? I'd go home, I'd go to sleep. My answer would be is I'd just keep lecturing. I'd just get a couple flashlights because I'm using a battery operated device anyway. And if I need to connect to the internet, I have a battery backup on it for, I think, 30 minutes or something. That wouldn't even be an issue for me, and I could continue to work without any concern about the electricity going out. But the case is that's what a hypothetical situation is. It's saying, what if this happened? He says oftentimes we work out of a categorical imperative. We work out of a imperative as a command. An imperative is like, go do this, as an imperative. And we work out of a moral imperative of hypothetical. Whereas our morality, our imperative of what we should be doing, is completely conditional. It's conditional. It's conditioned upon the fact that if this is happening, then I'm going to do it this way. If that's happening, I'm going to do it that way. And so we work out of what he would call a conditional or a hypothetical imperative. And instead he says we should work out of what we call a categorical imperative. A categorical statement is a statement that is like all this or none of this, or, these large categorical, we say things in a huge category, like all people are this, or all dogs are canines. And so categorical statements are ones that are universal. And what he's saying is we should always act out of a moral imperative that is universal. We should act in a way that everybody can do it. And so he comes up with the categorical imperative, which is act only according to that maximum by which you can at the same time will that it become a universal law. Now, that is a big statement to say, basically, act only according to that maximum. A maximum is a rule. So he's saying act according to the rule, or simply put, follow the rule. And he's saying follow the rule by which you can at the same time will that it become a universal law. He's saying follow the rule that says everybody can do it at the same time. Okay? Follow the rule that everybody can follow at the same time. That's what he's saying. And he's saying if everybody can't do it, then he shouldn't be doing it. If you are an exception to the rule, then it's not okay. For example, I sometimes buy like little equal or sweet and low packets in the store because I use them. I use them. I make coffee in the morning. I personally like to drink my coffee black or with just a little bit of cream. Not that you really need to know that in case you want to buy me coffee though. Anyway, but the case though is but some people do, and I buy the packets. But the case is that some people I know they just when they're out, they'll just steal 4 or 5 off the table because they don't use a lot of them, or they just don't want to buy them, and so they'll just constantly be stealing the packets, right? And me, I'm just like, I use them, I'll just buy them. I'm not gonna spend my day trying to scrounge about like trying to find packets. And so what happens is that in that case, though, you can take those packets from like a grocery store or gas station or something. Just take them, and it works because you're an exception, right? But if everybody goes out and just takes those packets, it begins to become a problem because they begin to perhaps it becomes an ununiversalizable action. It becomes where it becomes too costly for companies to constantly be buying these packets when all they do is get stolen. Now, I don't know if that would be the case. That's probably one of those where it wouldn't actually cause a problem, but the case is that as far as that goes, the whole point of that is that you are able to do it because you're an exception, because it's not the norm. But if everybody went out and did it, then it would become a problem. For example, if everybody went out and stole it would be a problem. But if you're the only one who goes out and steals, then it's not a problem. And so, a big part of ethics is not just about whether or not it can be done by you. It's about whether or not everybody can do it and it still be okay. If everybody, sped and cut people off, then would it be universalizable? No. If everybody, when they saw a construction zone, left lane closing at 1 mile, and they went ahead and drove down the empty lane and then cut in, would that be possible? No, because everybody would be cutting everybody off and they'd never get through. I mean, it would just make no sense to do that. And so it really only works in a positive way, if you can actually get ahead in traffic if you're the exception. And what Khan's saying is you shouldn't try to be the exception, you should try to follow the rule that everybody else is. That's what really ethics is about. Ethics is about doing what everybody else is doing in order to make it work. And so what he does is he creates this idea that you should follow a rule that everybody else does. And so the rules are things like don't steal, don't take things that aren't yours, don't kill people, don't do things like that, and return borrowed goods and help other people, whatever these things would be. But they're these wide things that everybody can do and there's not a problem doing them. The other thing he says is you should act out of what we call a goodwill. And the goodwill is this idea of acting in a way that you're not worried about the consequences, you're not worried about the action, you are simply worried about doing the right thing because it is the right thing to do. End of story. You're not worried about the consequences, you're not worried about the situation, you are simply doing them because they're the right thing to do. And so he says act out of goodwill. You don't do it because of what positive or negative, what consequences come about. You're doing it because it's simply a good thing to do.